So anytime I see that video, I am in utter shock at the attitude of the mayor of all mayors in Africa. In fact, I'm sure you recall when he was honored with that position. But what makes the mayor think that he can do that? Anyway, let's get back to our conversation. Francis Xavier Sosu is human rights lawyer. He's here with me in the studio. I almost said in the office, but this is my own, my kind of office.
So, yeah.
But what do you think about the mayor of all mayors?
Well, I think that the mayor is going beyond bounds and must be held in check. You know, Ghana is not a lawless place, and I believe that he knows that. The whole fact is that the directive given by the president on the national sanitation is a beautiful one. You know, because I believe that the spirit of voluntarism is almost nil now in Ghana. So any attempt to really bring back that is good. But, you know, such reactions, you know, towards the public for not participating, for me, I think it was completely, uncalled for. And he is not the only one. I recall that when I actually heard that there were some, you know, MCEs who closed down some SDA churches. Recently, you remember that MC that was actually jailed for contempt of court, and you know, the Tria DC. So you know, these are people who are supposed to be the face, the eye of the president before the people in the various MMDAs. And if this is what they are doing, I think that they are giving the president a very bad publicity and must be brought to book. It is against the code of conduct of public office holders. And I think that he needs really
too many times he's done this. Nobody's spoken about it. Even if you spoke about it, nothing happened, and it was as if it was a law unto his own self.
And perhaps that is why he continues to do that. I think somebody needs to, you know, apply the brake somewhere. The president needs to crack the whip. I think he must be called to order. Otherwise,
and the things he says in the video,
very unprintable.
Definitely he doesn't care about.
I mean, and for me,
total disregard and disrespect for the Ghanaian people.
Honestly, I would be willing to offer a free legal service to that guy if he's available, because this is a clear case of human rights violation. You know, because you look at Article 1 of the Constitution, it talks about sovereignty of the people. It resides in the people. It doesn't matter whether he's living in a ghetto, he's a kayayo, he's a driver, a carpenter. The sovereignty of this nation resides in him. And as a leader, we have only come together to entrust this sovereignty into your hands so that you would use that power for and on our behalf and for our welfare, not to trample upon us and to mistreat us. Look at how he manhandled the guy. In fact, but for the timely intervention of
another guy,
it was going to be very terrible. And this is Dr. Okovandapwe, a doctor of books.
Imagine
so
that.
How much more those living in the ghettos? You know, so I think it is completely uncalled for, and he must be brought to book.
I agree. But let's talk about another shame. This particular one sends shivers down my spine, because then you never know when you'd need the service of the ambulance. And you never know when you get the service of the ambulance without a relative. And so this young man who sleeps on the streets of Kukumleme, very, very sick. Some good Samaritans call the ambulance on his behalf. The ambulance comes for him, and hospital rejects the sick person, wouldn't treat him. So the ambulance claims they had no choice. The crew on the ambulance claimed they had no choice but to return the man to the streets. He came back only for the rain to fall, and he lay there in the rain.
That is very terrible.
And I'm thinking, I never know when I'm going to fall sick, when I'm not going to have my family by me. I may have the opportunity to call the ambulance. But why will the hospital reject you based on that? First of all, what's your quick overview of the situation?
I think this is a typical epitome of the lawlessness, the ineffective social systems that we have. It's an indication of a complete breakdown of our social welfare system, and it is very unfortunate, you know, to say the least, because I mean, how on earth can this be said of I mean, an oil-rich country like Ghana. You know, and it's completely uncalled for. I think that somebody must be brought to book. You know, these guys who were in that ambulance, the ambulance crew, the doctors, and then the nurses that turn this person away, all of them are people that must be brought to book. Otherwise, we are getting nowhere.
I'm happy you mentioned this is a failure of the social welfare system. And so I'll have Benjamin Otu, who is Greater Accra Director for the Department of Social Welfare, respond to this. Benjamin has joined us over the telephone. Benjamin.
Hello, madam.
I'm happy you could join us here on Newsdesk. Benjamin.
Yeah.
What do you think about the situation?
In the first place, I must do some correction. I'm no longer the Greater Accra Regional Director. I've transferred to Ashanti Region.
Very well.
Yeah. I listened to what the gentleman said about the condition or situation of the man who was knocked down by the vehicle. I think the hospital was wrong because we have the social welfare department has hospital welfare officers in our major hospital. So that if this person was sent in, knocked down, whether unconscious or conscious, they could have admitted the person and referred the matter to the social welfare unit at the hospital for them to take it up. If they conduct their investigation and they are not able to trace any relatives, then they can treat that person as a pauper. But to reject the person not to be admitted and for him to be sent back to where they found him for the rain to beat him, I think it's inhuman. The hospital administration didn't do the right thing. We have hospital welfare officers at the hospital. Or do
you have your social welfare people at all hospitals?
If even we don't have them at all hospitals, they could have admitted and informed the regional director of social welfare, Greater Accra, about the situation. He would have nominated or assigned some officers to follow up on the case and see how best to help the patient rather than to turn the patients away.
I see. Because I find it shocking for the hospital to give the excuse of this person has no relatives in the ambulance, and so
the fact that he doesn't have relatives,
you can't treat the person. Because I know in other jurisdictions they'll treat a Jane Doe or a Joe Doe and later find out, like Benjamin is saying. But Xavier, do you see any human rights violations here?
Absolutely. You know, the right to life is a fundamental right. You know, and any breaches that has a potential of affecting that right automatically is a violation that must be addressed. If you look at the hospital's attitude, or better still, ineptitude, it is so clear that on that occasion they violated the right of the person. From what the social welfare director from Ashanti region is telling us, there was no basis whatsoever. It was as though they were only sacking them to go and kill the person. You know, and no wonder the ambulance service went and simply dumped the person where they picked the person from. I mean, how can we be saying this, I mean, on air right now? I mean, this is a country, a state, an independent state. So the ambulance officers could not in any way also speak to the social welfare. They simply felt...
How do these groups work together?
I mean, how do they work together?
Benjamin, perhaps let me have you address that. How do you work with these services? The healthcare services, the ambulance service, the Ghana Police Service. How do you people work together?
Yes, the social welfare and the hospital welfare service, Ghana Health Service or Ministry of, they work in concert in helping solve problems of patients. That is what we call psychosocial problems, those who have psychological and social problems. in this instance, for instance, I don't also understand why you see, maybe the ambulance people, they also don't know what to do in that circumstance. But if they had also insisted and consulted the administration properly, maybe the best thing or the proper thing would have been done. But for them to also
does any collaboration exist between the Department of Social Welfare, the ambulance service, the Ghana Police Service?
There is no. I don't think there is a direct correlation or relationship between the ambulance service and the department. The department deals directly with the Ministry of Health, especially the Ghana Health Service and the specific hospitals.
I see. Xavier, how healthy is that? No relationship, no direct relationship.
Yeah, but you know, when he talks about direct relationship, I mean, I'm a little bit at a loss what exactly he's talking about, because, you know, in a social system, every social institution is independently dependent on each other. So there is always a relationship. I believe that it was only act of either lawlessness and ineptitude, people not doing their work well, and simply, you know, flouting laid down procedures and rules. For example, those driving the ambulance, those officers, couldn't they have consulted their superiors? I'm sure if they had consulted their superiors, the superiors would have given them a better directive. So on that occasion, they simply did not do their work. When you talk about the hospital administration, the nurses who first met the patient that was brought, if they had problems, they should have reported to their superior. And this is the National Ambulance Service. That's a national. So by all means, people who are working there should be able to know these procedures so that they would not endanger lives of people. Look, and that was a police hospital. It wasn't the police hospital. Wow. I think that, look, we need to be up and doing. The president cannot come from the castle
and
to
come
the
and whip you
various
into
police
life.
stations or to the hospital to be doing these things for you. The regional minister will not come and do that. IGP will not come and do that. People must wake up and work. Otherwise, they break the system and they bring everything to a halt. Look at what just happened. This man could have died. And every life counts.
Benjamin.
Hello.
Let's just say that the police hospital was very much interested in the profit it will make. This is an assumption.
No, I'm just hearing that it is the police hospital where this incident took place. Is that not the case?
That is the case.
Yes, and I'm wondering, because the police hospital, they have the social services section, where we have social welfare officers there, headed by, I think, is Chief Superintendent, Mr. Sadongo. So I'm wondering why that thing happened, and the ward or the administration didn't refer it to the social service section. I'm also at a loss. Because that is exactly what happens when there is any case. Sometimes they inform me when I was the Greater Accra Director. They inform me, I minute whatever letter that is, and they send it back for the person to be admitted. But for this instance, I don't know. I'm not there, so I cannot.
Let's assume that the police hospital decided to be profit conscious, and so felt that the man perhaps couldn't pay for his medical services if he received any from them.
If the man couldn't pay his medical bill,
let's just assume so. What
that
usually?
The man couldn't pay the medical. You see, when the man is admitted, the social services section will assign an officer on that specific case. So it is upon that officer to investigate, interview the patient, to know where the patient comes from, so on and so forth, to get in-depth information about the patient. If after all this, he's not able to get somebody to stand in, then the person will be treated as a pauper, and the officer will have to justify why the person will have to be treated as a pauper, and the bills waived off.
The bills are just waived. The social welfare department does not pay.
The social welfare will recommend for the bill to be waived, and when the bill is waived and the person is discharged, that is not the end. The social welfare will also have to work on the patient to find a place for the patient. If I say find a place, it means that they have to say look for a relative. If still they cannot get a relative, and the condition of the man is said that he cannot be left on the street, then we have to go to court for a care order for that person to be treated as somebody who is infirm and be admitted at the National Infirmary at Ashanti Bekwai. Whilst investigations still continue, because we cannot leave the man on the street.
Very well. What you have said, elaborate and fluid process. But in practice, how fluid is this?
In practice, we've been doing it. When I was in Accra, we did one. We sent a person, because when he was sleeping at the Nat Hall. You know the Nat Hall at the Braca.
I do.
That was where my information was drawn to it. We first had to remove him to the Accra Rehabilitation Center, found a room there. Whilst the investigations continued, but when we were not making any headway, we sent the matter to court. The court granted us a care order. We sent the man to Ashanti Bekwai, and we've been receiving periodic reports on the progress of the man. Whilst investigations still continue. So it's something that we've been doing. Unless maybe that he didn't come to our attention. Before I left Accra, there was a similar case at Kanishi, and the man is at Bekwai. Fortunately, I'm in Ashanti region. So I've been following up. The man is still at Bekwai, and he's doing well.
How do these things usually come to your attention? Do you go out or you wait on reports? How do these cases come to your attention? Do you go out or you wait for reports to be made?
There when, my office, the Greater Accra Regional Director's Office is located in the Regional Coordinating Council office. And it was just by the NAT distance. So it was workers there who drew our attention to it. Usually people come and tell us. Maybe from the media, journalists who come and tell you, an assembly member will come and inform me.
I'm just going to have you hold the line briefly. Let me speak to Xavier as well. Hopefully you'll be listening in on the conversation. Xavier, when I saw this, the first thing that came to mind is, what kind of system do we have when it comes to social protection?
Yeah, I think when it comes to social protection, I believe that we haven't done that much. A lot of work I know has been done, except that it is not enough. There is nowhere in the world that a country has a perfect social protection system. For example, last year, I had the opportunity to visit some poor communities in the U.S. when we're doing outreach to street children. And sometimes I get so worried and I become so marveled. I'm like, so in America too, these things can happen, and it shocks me. But then the lesson I learned quickly was that there is no perfect system anywhere, but at least there should be a system. Over there, for all those poor people, at least they are known. It doesn't matter where they are known. There are various pockets of outreaches directed at these people. When it comes to our system, unfortunately, it's a bit absent. When it comes to social protection front in Ghana, I know there is LEAP that is doing quite well. Absolutely. Occasionally, it comes out. I heard about the major work done by the Ministry of Social Protection, which was the registration of aged people and pregnant women that went around, and the minister did quite a number of work in that regard. But generally speaking, I think we still have a long way to go. When you go out there, you look at street children, children of school-going age, and they stand at very prime areas. And I wonder what exactly we are doing to these kids. Some of them sleep on the streets in the night. And you wonder, so what policy is there to address this specific challenge that we are having as a country? It is different if you have the policy and you have challenges of implementation and all that. But it becomes problematic when it looks like there is nothing at all. Exactly.
Benjamin.
Hello.
Do some of these things exist here in the country? Perhaps.
I agree with what he said. We didn't have a policy on social protection. You see, we were most of the time, all the policies on children and the rest were fragmented until they brought in this Children's Act. But you realize that the Children's Act alone is not enough to help solve most of these problems. Unfortunately, we now have the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection. And I can tell you for a fact that policies are being drawn up. I'm sure by the end of the year, most of these policies, because there's a policy on social protection, there's a policy on children and family welfare, there's a policy on adoption, so on and so forth, which maybe next week we are even meeting again. To
Does it include the unemployed and destitute?
Unemployed and destitute?
Yes.
I am not aware of the unemployed.
But shouldn't we have a system?
I don't know whether it is the Ministry of Employment that is also coming out with a policy on unemployment. That's why I wouldn't know.
Shouldn't it come under social welfare?
Pardon me?
Shouldn't that come under social welfare so that there could be unemployment benefits
you see,
as part of a social protection intervention?
It's an implementing department. It's not a policy-making department. It's the ministry that makes policy. Social welfare is to implement the policy.
But you can also recommend.
Oh, definitely.
Once you can recommend, I'm sure we can still have a conversation around it. But beyond the policies, I believe that Xavier has made a very solid point beyond the policies. That I have lost my thought pattern. I don't know if you can.
In fact, I even wanted to make a quick one on the unemployment. You know, because one of the things I learned about the broken down system of, if you like, aspirations in the U.S. was due to benefits based on this destitute, unemployed people, you know, because most often than not, in fact, when you even come to Ghana, you look at the unemployment situation. Most often when people say, I am unemployed, they are only saying that I haven't got the job that I desire. It's not the case that they don't have anything doing. So somebody could say that, well, for now, I'm just doing some teaching, waiting for, you know, I'm still sending my applications round. So it becomes a bit difficult in that regard, but it is not impossible, especially when the condition travels beyond merely being an unemployed person into a destitute situation that could lead to either health hazards or loss of life or other social, problems.
And so, Benjamin, it brings me to the question I almost forgot. Do you work with a database? Do you have a database of unemployed, vulnerable, destitute persons you work with?
I don't think I can say for sure that we have a database on unemployed people, destitute and the rest, but like persons with disability and the rest, I think that one we have. But like I'm saying, you see, the ministry or the department came out of the Ministry of Employment and Social Welfare.
Very well.
So perhaps that ministry will have a database on unemployed.
I'm sure. I'm sure, and we'll perhaps transfer our questions to the ministries in due course. But I was just hoping that as an implementing body, some of these things you would already know. Thank you very much, Benjamin, for your time.
Thank you also.
Benjamin Otu is absolutely. Benjamin Otu is Ashanti Regional Director for the Department of Social Welfare. For a man who in the past has paid a lot of taxes to the state, and it comes to the turn of the state to take care of this man. An obligation of the state, it seems to have rejected or didn't happen at all. Can this man sue the state?
Absolutely. I mean, he has that right to sue the state. In fact, that is the essence of the rule of law. In fact, that is why we also have the separation of powers. Just so when there is a problem, you would always have at least a conduit, to address that problem. So for a man who has been this much violated, I believe that he is legally entitled to some compensation for the kind of ordeal he has gone through. In the first place, he shouldn't be where he is. He is only a victim of our broken down social problems and social situations. You know, so already a victim, and now being punished even in that state due to the ineptitude and lack of seriousness on the part of public office holders, because for each of all these people, they are working for the state, you know, and they renege on this obligation and responsibility that is on them, and that is to the detriment of the state. And I believe that this person can sue. And sometimes when we talk about going to court or suing for compensation, it's only not for the fun of getting some money or getting some compensation for the person, but it is about addressing the systemic failures and the systemic problems. Because sometimes once you sue, the Attorney General will definitely have to find out what happened on that day. And we'll get to know which officer was on duty, who was supposed to have done what, and so on and so forth. And
so it's some form of awakening.
That is so. And it can lead to people being dismissed, being cautioned, being transferred as a disciplinary measure to correct the system.
We look forward to something like that. Because speaking to the Deputy CEO for the ambulance service, he mentioned that this is not an isolated case. It is something that happens too often, because anytime someone is taken without a relative, the hospitals tend to reject them. The hospital will reject someone from the national ambulance for one reason or the other, and they, as the service, are not. It's not able to rectify it or do anything about it.
That is very strange, because I think this is an opportunity. I think this platform has offered us so many things, and I think Mr. Otu has really educated us. I believe that then it means they really do not know their work. If you know your work, you know who to speak to. You know who you need to communicate with, so that you can stop this menace of hospital rejecting people merely because their relatives are not following them.
Very well. Thank you very much, Xavier.
Francis, yeah, it's a pleasure.
Kojo Xavier Sosu is a human rights lawyer. We'll bring you more on the story in subsequent broadcasts, but now I have to go. I know we didn't talk about the ECOWAS summit, but that's only because we'll bring you live coverage right after me. So stay on. My name is Kemini Nyamani Amano.